Gorillas! The time has come! Yes! Thank you, Charmhole, and go ahead and unban Charmhole. And Charm will stop fucking around and getting banned in my fucking server. The time has come to put our fucking foot down and be clear about something that doesn't seem like it was very clear. We are 100% Marxist-Leninists in the age of multipolarity in the post-COVID world. We are Orthodox Marxist-Leninists. And infrared is different from other communist communities in that we don't ban people for having opposing ideologies. We don't ban people for not being Marxist-Leninists. If you're not a Marxist-Leninist and you want to be part of the infrared community, stick around. You're welcome. We won't ban you. We don't care about your ideology. We care about what you can contribute in terms of knowledge and in terms of insight, so on and so forth. We will not ban you for not being Marxist-Leninists and for not sharing our ideology. We will not. We will not. We've never done that, by the way. We've never done that. But there's a difference between infrared, which is the Deng Xiaoping internet platform, where we are Chinese-style communists, which means we believe in a dialectic of a unity of opposites, the infrared main line, and then the opposite of the line, which is the eclectic and ambiguous views of opposing ideologies and people with opposing views, and we tolerate both in order to strengthen the first line. So this is two-line struggle developed by Mao Zedong within Mao Zedong thought. And let me teach you about two-line struggle. Two-line struggle does not mean the eradication of all other lines by one line. It's a unity of opposites. The other line must be allowed, the false line, the erroneous line, must be allowed to breathe, must be allowed to have free and open expression in order for the correct line, the party line, to be maintained. Just like on Deng Xiaoping, he did that with the economy. There's two lines, the socialist 5-year plan of the Communist Party, and then the wild and ambiguous market forces influenced by international capitalism, which Deng Xiaoping allows to develop in order to strengthen and consolidate Chinese socialism. This is the Chinese dialectical logic of yin and yang, the Eastern wisdom that infrared has adopted. And many people don't understand that. Now, why are we doing this then? What's the problem? The problem is the overall guiding infrared vision has been distorted. What infrared in particular, not an individual who may or may not be part of the infrared community, but the collective vision of infrared has been distorted. It's becoming obfuscated. Certain things that I have said in the past are being taken, and erroneous implications and conclusions are being drawn from this. There's a number of them. Infrared has begun a study and an interrogation of various forms of non-Western and Western, for that matter, alternate histories and alternate interpretations of history and different forms of sovereignty and different proto-forms of socialism and the essence of socialism, the common sociality, the fucking fundamental meaning of land reform, who is the good guy, who is the bad guy, the near exoneration of Sultan Abdulhamid II against the Freemasonic Young Turk movement, for example, the view that the Tsardom of Muscovy, the Qing dynasty, the Mongol Empire, Mongol modernity, all these new ideas, the reconciliation between Marxism and religion and traditionalism. This is the joyous golden age of Marxist-Leninist thinking in the United States, thanks to the infrared movement, and there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it. This is a golden age, a breath of fresh air, revitalizing communism in the West, which is what we're doing. Which is what we're doing. Although some are drawing false conclusions from this, which I consider to be erroneous. There are those, I heard this morning from my mods, that there are some people in the server defending Imperial Japan, claiming that Imperial Japan is doing something similar to Russia today with Russia's special military operation, saying, oh, Japan was based because it was non-Western. I've heard various deviations. I've heard whispers of people mounting a campaign to exonerate Gladio operatives during Italy's years of lead. I've heard, I know of directly, this Franco posting nonsense where there's this cult of personality of Franco that is trying to be pushed by one poster in particular, and there's a handful of people that seem to be jumping on board. Why are all these things false and wrong? I'm not just going to sit here and call them fascist. We're going to have a struggle session, and we are going to make a critique of it, and we're going to discuss and vehemently debate these various deviations of the infrared main line, because they are deviations. Thank you so much, One Many. Appreciate
I
you.
accidentally got beamed from saying the N-word from the server. I didn't know any better. Can you unban me? Discord name is Johnny Rebel Lives number 8723.
Why would you say the N-word? Are you black? Why would you say it? Why would you say the N-word? That's not an accident, okay? That is not an accident. I'm sorry to tell you. What kind of fucking accident is that? You accidentally said the N-word? No, you know what you were doing. You can't accidentally say the God. I mean, what? Did your hands on your keyboard type the wrong? I mean, what do you mean it was an accident? Couldn't possibly be an accident. I mean, you even get banned from the goddamn Telegram for that stupid shit. No N-word allowed. We're pretty lenient on free speech. When it comes to every fucking word in the book, no N-word. I have instituted this policy of no N-word because infrared is in fact part of the conspiracy of the Black World Empire. Thank you so much, Destiny's Crack Dealer. The Black World Empire and Karaboga Theory. RTSG August will tell you more about that. But infrared is a pro-black organization.
Nah, I didn't say it with a hard R. It was stupid. I just didn't know it was a rule.
Okay. Well, mods, give me the 411 on who this person is and whether they should be unbanned. The mods will know. Thank you for the 5, by the way. Infrared, we are a black organization. Read what Dugan has said about this matter. Dugan has said everything about this matter that needs to be said. So, we tolerate free speech. No N-word. Period. By the way, the Telegram, you can say anything you want. No N-word. That's our rule. No N-word. Anyway, okay? Let me tell you something. Because people need to be clear about this shit, okay? Infrared has a main official guiding ideology, and then we let you guys believe whatever the fuck you want. You can literally have any ideology you want. We don't give a fuck. As long as the main guiding ideology is acknowledged as the official one. The official one is being diluted by a right deviation. And also, there's the left deviationists, because the left deviationists are also in the server, and they're always constantly calling for people to get banned. Oh, ban this person, ban that person. So I'm going to make it very clear. I'm not giving room to the left deviationists. We're going to crack down on the right deviationists, and we're going to be cracking down on the left deviationists. Both of them at the same goddamn time. The Golden Stalinist Center will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what's going to be happening tonight. The Golden Stalinist Center will prevail. Okay? That will prevail. Infrared, your Telegram is... Infrared is a 100% Marxist-Leninist guiding principle, guiding ideology. Deviationism must be confronted through debate. We're not going to ban you for being a deviationist. but we will debate you. And even if you don't agree with us in the end, at least the official infrared line will be immortally established and enshrined in stone tablets so no one can represent the official infrared position. I don't want to see these people who are putting infrared globes and then fucking Mussolini on their goddamn Twitters. That's you. That's not us. That's not the official infrared line. You got it? We are Marxist-Leninists. Now, we're not going to get our panties in a bunch for you doing that. We don't give a fuck. It's the internet at the end of the day. But, I mean, people, they're putting a fucking infrared globe and then some Hitler shit. It's not what we stand for. You're trying to hijack the infrared guiding ideology to serve your own ends, and it's dishonest. It's dishonest. You need to be honest about what infrared stands for, because it's very clear and canonical. Now, we may be tolerant of other ideologies, because we're not pussies, and we can debate anything. We don't give a fuck. And I think the community is more than well capable of debating anything. We're not scared of other ideologies. Okay? It's the CIA, whatever it is, it's inevitable. We're not scared of other ideologies. But we need to put our foot down and make it clear where infrared stands on these issues. Infrared is Marxism-Leninism, Chinese style, which means we have that yin-yang dialectic. We believe in the unity of opposites. We believe in the unity of the correct, and we give breathing room for the false. So we're not here to exterminate other ideologies or even the false line. It's two-line struggle. Uphold the guiding line of infrared. Give breathing room to the false line in order that we may self-critique ourselves better, stronger than ever before. Deng Xiaoping, Mao Zedong thought, style, Marxism-Leninism, that's what we stand for. It's the most unique political community on the fucking internet. You go to Midwestern Marxist Discord, and he'll ban you for being a MAGA communist. We don't ban you for being any ideology in our Discord server. And that's why the far right tends to gain so much prominence on Twitter. When they're like, oh, there's this far right person on Infrared's Discord or on Infrared's Telegram. Yeah, because we don't ban for ideology. And when there's free speech, the leftists, it's like there's a big fish, which are the far right people, and they gobble up these leftists like they're little chicken nuggets. Because leftists are pussies. You can't fucking defend yourself. You can't debate yourself. You can't assert your position. So you get gobbled up by the rightists because your position is bankrupt. It's indefensible. You are incompetent. You're a fucking loser. And you've been comfortable with this position you have because of big tech censorship. You've always been in your comfort zone to the point where your position has never been challenged. So all of a sudden you have to confront these right-wing people, and you're not used to being able to do that, right? Because you're a fucking pussy who's hiding behind censorship, and they're gobbling you up like you're a little chicken nugget. You're pathetic. It's not my fault you're a fucking shitty, incompetent debater. Don't come at me and complain about shit you are incapable of debating on. That's what we've always had. But why do I have to intervene? I have to intervene now because I don't want to ban the Franco guy, Babasla. I don't want to ban him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. But I've warned him so many times, stop with the Franco shit. It's fucking annoying because it's like spam. Now, if you want to have some nuanced view and be like, oh, during the Cold War, Franco was not that friendly with NATO, and, you know, he was friends with Fidel Castro. That's like nuance. That's nuance. I'm okay with nuance. I don't care, actually, right? But when it's getting to the point where you're making Flame of Liberation style infographics, just like the dumb shit he does with Saddam, it's like, what is up with these fucking ideologies where you just find some random strongman leader who has no relevance anymore, and you're like, oh, this should also be integrated with communism. Saddam was also a communist. Oh, Franco was also... Where does this shit come from? Right? It's annoying. It's spam. It's stupid. We're here for the future. Now, I have some disagreements with the Jehu wing of the community. The Jehu stuff is gaining some prominence as well. I'm fine with it. But I've also have had criticisms of that too. But at least the Jehu people are forward, future-oriented, where they're like, we love robots, we want Amazon to automate everything, we want, complete automation, Elon Musk, robotic, AI, future. I mean, like, that's all great stuff. That's kind of in line with the infrared vision, which is why we don't really crack down on it, because it's ultimately helping the infrared kind of mecha-tanky infrared vision, right? But what the fuck is this Franco stuff? I mean, even if you're right, which I don't think you are, what is it? What good is it, right? What do we learn from what? Franco was a fucking loser. He had to rely on U.S. loans and he was a puppet of Spain's dynastic, spooky, landholding elite class and the Spanish royal family. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate you.
We cannot allow foreign forces to infiltrate our infrared movement. Think about DeSantis and Trump. Purge the dissenters and Francos.
We're not gonna purge anyone. We're gonna debate.
It's all about dialectics. Says someone who is far right. I welcome the intellectual discussion between the two in order to reach a synthesis of ideas.
Yeah, we do debate. We don't do this banning shit. That's pussy shit. And the banning that we do... listen, a lot of people have complained to me, Haas, I got banned on your Discord. If you got banned on my Discord, blame Discord. Don't fucking blame us. We don't want our server to get fucking banned. That's why we ban you. It's not because we want to ban you from the community. It's because Discord makes us fucking ban you. So you put our server in danger somehow. Blame Discord. Don't fucking blame me if you got banned. Got it? If it was my way, no one would... Listen, if it was my way, this is what would get banned. Ready? Anime would get banned. All sexual content would get banned, and the N-word would be banned, and that's it. Literally, that's it. That's it. No sexual content, no pornography, no anime, no N-word. Everything else you can fucking say. That would be my rule for an online community. Discord won't let me have that freedom, so you gotta take it to the Telegram. I'm not a pussy, that's why we allow free speech, by the way. Getting your panties in a bunch because of a fucking ideology? Shut the fuck up, bitch. I don't know, this person has this ideology. Then debate them, you dumb bitch. Why are you so insecure? But we uphold the infrared line. We uphold the infrared line, and that's what fucking matters. There's an infrared line. Marxism-Leninism in the age of multipolarity in the post-COVID world. 100% Stalinist, 100% Maoist, capital C communist, mecha tankies rising. MAGA communism is here to stay. We've got a clear line. It's a clear golden Stalinist center. There's the right deviations and there's the left deviations. And it's a golden Stalinist center, and it's a very consistent, coherent vision we have going here at Infrared. You understand? I'm here to reassert the infrared line, to make it clear to all, to make it clear to the world. Why did you get kicked out of the Discord? All right, mods, bring him back unless he committed some egregious, horrible crime. Bring him back to debate, Carlo. Go bring him back to debate. He wants to debate about it. All right? The Franco nonsense will be confronted. I don't know if Babasa is going to be debating, but what is this shit about Imperial Japan I'm hearing? Okay? We're going to be debating this shit about Imperial Japan. Thank you so much, Carlo. Appreciate you.
I want to talk about Franco Morphos number 8689. Got kicked out the Discord.
Thank you so much, Carlo. Appreciate you. Thank you so much, PJ.
To censor ideas is to admit intellectual defeat.
Absolutely. That's what I've always believed. When it comes to an online community, that's what I always believed. How are we going to reach the masses if you're too fucking scared to tolerate someone who has an opposing view than you? It's so fucking stupid. If you don't do what I do, you end up like Midwestern Marxist Discord, where they're banning MAGA communists. It's so fucking stupid. How different are we from Midwestern Marx on like 99% of issues? Not different at all, right? But because we disagree about the revolutionary strategy in the United States, I guess, and the baristas, that's grounds to fucking ban us. We're the same as neo-Nazis. It's so fucking stupid. Like, how sectarian is that, right? We're not going to end up like that. Where's the line, right? That's what leftists do. They ban every opposing view. It's just sectarianism. We're not going to do it. Our primary contradiction is anti-establishment. At the end of the day, if we're all on the same... I mean, even people who shill for the establishment are allowed in the Discord, right? But it's like we don't see other people who are fighting the establishment as dangerous unless they're wrecking that initiative and they're fucking up our optics and they're feds and wreckers and shit. Then yeah, fuck them, right? But I don't give a fuck if someone is like some right-wing guy who's against the establishment. How is that a danger to me? How is that a threat to me? It's not. But what I'm concerned about is upholding the infrared line within our community to make it clear where we stand, what this vision stands for, and to clear the record on what I have meant in the things I have said in the past, reflecting my own positions. So this is just as much a struggle session within the infrared community as much as it is Haz al-Din clearing the goddamn record as far as where I stand on these several issues. Okay? Rev, you got banned from from Midwestern Marx's Discord, right? Yeah. That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Anyway, we're going to be doing this now. So this is this Imperial Japan guy. So if a mod wants to come in here and give their side of the story, go ahead. Sovet, go ahead, unmute yourself and speak.
What do you want me to say? First off.
So Prism says you were comparing Japan...
Prism. You mean Samira. Samira whispered in your ear.
No,
Samira
I didn't.
whispered.
Shut the fuck up, first of all. I have not talked to Samira about any of this. You stop making assumptions.
No.
So shut the fuck up about that. Prism told me that you were saying something about Japan being the same as Russia's special military. What were you saying? What was that? What was that jibber jabber about? Go ahead.
No, that's just Samira taking me out of context.
Samira has nothing to do with this.
Samira has... Yes, it has everything to do with...
Why? Because Prism... All right, Prism, get in here. Because clearly there's a misunderstanding here.
What does Prism know about Bosse?
No, Prism, get in here. Prism is the one who told me... Shut up. Prism's the one who told me we're going to have Prism
supports Gandhi incest. He supports Gandhi incest.
What?
Bro, you don't know Gandhi fucked his niece?
All right, we're going to have Prism come in here and clarify what's going on. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Someone get Prism in here. Or is he not available? So what is this Gandhi... Okay, first of all, we're not going there yet. We're going to first... Okay, what is this shit about Imperial Japan? Go ahead.
Okay, so the blue cap that I'm mentioning, Samira...
The what?
All of a sudden... I can't say the word. We're on YouTube.
Did you just say a word that's not allowed on YouTube?
No, I said blue cap.
What is that?
You, the emoji man. You know what it means.
Blue? I don't know what that means.
Okay. Something that... A puzzle piece in your brain.
Okay. You mean a puzzle piece. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so puzzle piece Samira, we went into I don't even know how. She was defending the CPI, the Indian communists supporting the INC against Bose, who was the legitimate leader of the INC, who was deposed.
You mean the Japan collaborator?
The Japan collab. Bro, he fought for Indian independence. The mutiny of 1946 would have not occurred if it weren't for the fact that...
You don't think the communists wanted India's independence?
Well, of course they wanted it.
So they opposed, but they also opposed collaborating with Japan, didn't they?
Okay. Have you heard of Mao's quote on Japan, on the Imperial Army?
What did he say?
Okay. So I already pasted it in VC chat, but I said, of course, so this is from Mao's words. I said, of course, the invasion was bad in relation to Japan's invasion of KMT China and China as a whole. But we should not look at this bad side alone. On the other hand, Japan has done us a great favor in China. If Japan had not occupied half of China, the Chinese people would have not awakened. In this respect, we have to thank the Japanese Imperial Army. So what does that mean?
That's just Mao's dialectical thinking, but
yes. But the thing is, Prism or Samira, Prism is a clone of Samira, I think, was saying that equivocating Mao's pragmatic approach rather than looking at purely at ideology, because Samir was saying, oh, we should support, we should always critically oppose Japan because they're the fascist state, when in reality, Roosevelt...
These are your words.
Let me speak. Don't be like Samir like yesterday.
You compared to that Simone. That's all I said. I was not involved in your debate, bro. Like, I don't know why you're dragging me into this shit.
Okay, so who whispered in your ear? Who other than Samira? It's clear Samira told
this isn't a debate. I mean, this was what you said. Did you not compare it to that?
No. I did not say
I was listening to the debate. I didn't take part in it, but I was listening to that shit. You compared to that.
The point when I was I will get to the Russia thing, the special military operation, how I was equivocating. But the point I was making was that Mao, in his case, saw that the Japanese attacking China was an opportunity to seize national leadership, the same way that Azad Hind and Bose saw a way to lead the Indian national movement, because the INC so fucking wasn't.
But hold on, there's a difference, okay? So Mao was saying, he was dialectically speaking about how the Japanese created the Chinese resistance against the Japanese, and that the Chinese resistance awakened the Chinese nation. He wasn't saying, we want to take this opportunity to pragmatically align with Japan and its plans for the East Asia greater prosperity. I mean, a satanic, evil, disgusting, horrific, anti-human, Klaus Schwab, Asian Klaus Schwab world order, which is what Japan was creating. Degrowth, depopulation, genocidal, completely satanic, godless, anti-human, system in East Asia. The Asian Great Reset is what they called it.
Okay.
I'm calling it that. So you're saying these Indian leaders were collaborating with Japan, but there were anti-colonial Indians within India who opposed the British colonization, who had the support of the Soviets, by the way, who didn't find it necessary to collaborate with the Japanese. I mean, what is Japan doing in India? Why is Japan in India?
Okay. So what did the CPI do? What brilliant maneuvers did the CPI do to achieve India's independence?
What did the Bose guy do? What did he do?
Okay, so Bose, he gathered 50,000 Indians who were left to die in Malaya by the British, because without the Indians, Britain would have completely lost the World War because they did not have the manpower. So what Bose did, who was psyoped out of the INC leadership because he proposed revolutionary action just the same way Mao did, and just the same way Che Guevara would, instead being replaced by the soy cock Gandhi, who all the British Anglo boxers will say, oh, he achieved India's liberation. No, it was Bose, because without him, the mutiny of 1946, which occurred after the trial of the three generals, who in fact were not all Hindu nationalists, as a lot of Angloid empiricists will claim. One was Hindu, one was Muslim,
I don't care about that. I don't care.
And one was Sikh.
I don't care about that. Listen, the problem is India has never been independent because they just gained a formal independence, but the Indian ruling class has always been closely in bed with the British Empire, even to this day. So I don't know what independence there is to speak of, whether accomplished by Gandhi or Bose. I do not see a real independence. I see India still part of the Commonwealth. India's never actually truly seceded from the British Empire. Of course, the British were not going to let India go just like that. It wasn't Bose who was responsible for that. It wasn't Gandhi. It never really happened to begin with, so to speak.
So what? You think a nation like... So what about the Kemalist example in Turkey? What, Kemal didn't create his own, create a nation out of nothing, for example? Of course, Indians could have done it the same way. It was the fact that the INC allowed the continuation of British administration and British institutions, and allowed for all the systems in place which robbed India of its wealth, and why India is still far behind China to this day.
So what would collaboration with the Japanese have entailed?
Dude, just because you're tactically aligning with someone doesn't mean that they're going to completely subjugate you. Of course, in China's case,
it makes no sense, because if he was a real leader... Now, that was just the circumstances of the Second World War. Why not plan to ally with the Soviet Union to liberate India?
Because the Soviets weren't willing to one, they didn't want to... First of all, why would they go behind the British? Like, for example, this is one of the main reasons Tito and Stalin split over the issue of Greece. Stalin agreed with the British: we will not allow Greek communists to rise up, and we will let you keep your sphere of influence. Now, of course, this made sense because Stalin wanted to keep his sphere in the East, and this is all.
So what evidence was there that such an agreement was kept with regard to India?
Because the borders of India and the Soviets were by purpose drawn like that. Have you ever noticed the Afghani border between India, now modern day Pakistan, and the Soviets, now modern day, I think, Tajikistan? Do you notice that little sliver in Afghanistan? We gotta get because it was drawn so that the Soviets and the British wouldn't collide. They wanted to keep a buffer zone, and that's what. And although the Soviets, you could say, were ideologically different from the Russian Empire, they continued that policy of freezing the great game of Asia that was happening in the 1800s.
Yeah, but the critical element is, of course, China, right? Because China threw off the Japanese invaders, threw off the yoke of the Japanese invaders. Of course, China was still partially colonized by the British, and the British still had ambitions to keep China in their own quote-unquote sphere of influence. So why could there not be an anti-colonial revolution on the part of India without supporting Japan, without allying with Japan?
Because the Indians were purposefully being starved off, purposely being fed of propaganda. Around 54,000 grains of, not 1,000 tons of rice were being exported out of Bengal during the Bangladesh famine.
I'm not denying the Bengal famine. I'm not denying it.
Yeah, Samira was saying that the Japanese were bombing military targets in Bangladesh.
The USSR had sent relief to that famine, which comes into contradiction with the view that the USSR told Britain that India is theirs. No, the USSR cultivated its own relations with India and did so.
Yeah, but the military and political alignment of India only fully materialized under the Khrushchevite era, and that's when India really declined.
That was when India was aligned with the remnants of the British Empire in the form of JFK and the others who were creating a pact against China. That's what you're missing.
But India, the reason why India's foreign policy is formulated the way it is because of the INC's legacy, which wouldn't have been the case if Bose was in power instead. This is the wrong equivocation you're making. Oh, what difference would one man over another be in the political struggle? It has everything to do with it.
What you're missing is that Imperial Japan was destined to defeat. That doesn't seem to fit within that greater strategy by Bose. You had the valiant Chinese people, the Korean peoples, resisting the Japanese aggressors. You had the USSR eventually come and get rid of Japan out of Manchuria, so on and so forth. So why is Bose hedging his bets on an untenable Imperial Japan? Fundamentally untenable. I mean, Japan is quote-unquote Imperial Japan. What precedent for a fucking empire exists in Japan? What history of any empire? I mean, Japan is a fucking island. There's no hinterlands. It had to parasitize the rest of Asia. It's a completely it's like hedging your bets siding with Israel. It's a completely fake, synthetic, artificial, imperial. It's a completely hyper-modern, barbaric ideology they created with no historical organic basis. How is it wise to collaborate with Imperial Japan and hedge one's bets on the greater, so-called Greater East Asia prosperity sphere?
Has replaced the words. Okay, so you said hyper individualistic or modernistic society, barbaristic island. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah,
let me
but
think. Oh yeah, the English, the Anglo Empire, which India was under occupation.
No one denies that. But Japan, in the immediate short term, was untenable. Even from a pragmatic perspective, it's untenable. So even if it wasn't moral, it was also unwise to want a strategic or tactical alliance with Imperial Japan when the defeat of the Japanese imperial aggressors was 100% certain. It was a complete certainty, with or without the British. By the way, the British, what did the British do? It was the Chinese and Koreans and others who carried the brunt of the struggle against the Japanese. It was the USSR, and then also, admittedly, America and the Pacific Islands at least. So, what did the British have to do with it? The British fought the Japanese a little bit, not nearly as much as the other forces fighting Japan at the time.
Yeah, but that's the point. Bose didn't have to, was only relying on Japan as a tactic support. Before Japan, he was considering having the Germans invade through Iran to secure India's independence. Now you can say, oh no, not Hitler, Hitler bad. Oh, okay, so we get it. Hitler is the boogeyman, but we have other people in history like Roosevelt who enabled the business plot, but I digress.
Stuff. Hitler is...
Okay, yeah, I don't care. That's the point. I don't care about ideology. I don't care about moralism. Or the positive.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying you're wrong about. Because even from a cold, pragmatic perspective, it's foolish to ally with a madman like Hitler, in addition to Imperial Japan. No prospect of victory, no chance of victory at all.
But no that's the point. For example, Burma, the first Prime Minister of Burma, Aung San, the father of Aung San Suu Kyi, he wouldn't have gained independence for Burma the way he did if he hadn't let the Japanese go to his country and had the Japanese formally declare Burma's independence. The British had no choice.
What happened to that independence afterwards?
The British assassinated him and installed a PSYOP government in his place, which was eventually couped by some military juntas.
So that's what happens when you rely on foreign powers to secure your independence, instead of digging deep in the soil of your own people to do it. This guy Bose, you're talking about, why couldn't he rally the Indian countryside and the Indian peasants to achieve the liberation of India? That's the question.
He had them on his side. He had them on his side under the INC.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He wasn't waging a massive... he could have waged a massive, huge people's war against Britain. He went to Japan instead. It makes no sense to me. Relying on foreigners to liberate your own people. How is that?
So how did Chiang Kai-shek achieve national? How did he achieve national leadership of China during the 1910s and 1930s? Do you think he just had all the information about how to conduct the Northern Offensive? No, he went to the Japanese military school to get all this information.
What's your point?
You will always need to rely on
he went to the Japanese military school, and then he came back to China, and he rallied the Chinese people, And then also he rallied some of them, by the way, because they ended up going to... That's what you're missing here. What did Mao do? Mao went to the countryside and he won the Chinese peasant, which is why... sorry, cracking my voice. That is why the Chinese won the Chinese Civil War, right? That's what you're
But
missing now, isn't it?
he couldn't have done that if the opportunity of World War II never occurred. If he would have, his forces would have dwindled.
What do you know about the Long March? What do you know about the 1930s? What the Communist Party was doing then in China? Mao
Yes,
went
of course
down,
I know they were organizing and
he went
creating
down
their
to the
own
people.
movement,
So
but they lost half of
Bose-
their men
Bose
on the
went
Long
down-
March.
Bose went down on Japan, and Mao went down to the people.
Okay, you're saying this as if Bose was located in Tokyo waiting for the Japanese orders. No, all he was given was 50,000 men to march into India, nothing else by the Japanese. And he had complete
How are you
control
gonna
over
win
the
the- how are you
men.
gonna win
He
the
sat
national-
with them, he
How will
ate
you
with
win the
them, he
national
drank with
liberation
them.
of India without rallying the whole of the Indian masses?
How can you rally the people if all the news outlets, there is no way of communicating of national liberation when all of the countryside is propagated through this caste system imposed by the British and the liberal Muslim League, which was an Anglo psyop.
So what was Imperial Japan's plan for the caste system, you think? Huh? You think Imperial Japan is
Well, you think Imperial Japan could have survived a dozen more years after the war? Of course not. Bose wouldn't need to rely on Japan if he had all of India. It's like saying, oh, the PRC needed to rely on the Soviets. Hell no. Mao, as soon as Khrushchev came into power, Mao disregarded the Soviets. He could say, fuck you, I don't need you. I will conduct my own people's revolution. I will lead the third world. I don't need your fucking revisionism to guide my own
Bose
nation.
is setting up India for disaster, regionally
How could
speaking.
you know that? If Mao died in the Long March, you would be saying the same thing.
No, I
because
wouldn't.
you would be able to
Because Bose is allying with Imperial Japan, which is the enemy of all the peoples of Asia, and then he wants to build a state based on this alliance. How does that square? If India wants to cut its reliance on the West and be a regional power, how the hell is India going to have friendly regional relations with its neighbors when India is out here saying, yeah, we owe our independence and our statehood to the people who exterminated and tried to enslave and kill and slaughter all of you? How does that make sense? It seems regionally it's a complete disaster.
What, for India to tactically ally with the Japanese in the short term?
Yeah.
So what other option would they have had? Continue with the British for another 100 years, which they would have under the INC?
No, because, for example, you can wage an anti-colonial war of liberation against the British with the backing of
India
the Soviets.
is not China. India is not China. India does not have the mantle of heaven. There is not a centralized organ for the Indians to rally behind. There is, like you were saying, there is not a unifying force
there
for
was
Indians.
an anti-colonial movement in India. It was very diverse, you're right, but there could have been one that emerged. I mean, China would have been more than happy to assist India in its war of liberation against any foreign power. That was actually China's policy for a long time. China went to war in fucking Korea to do the same. So, of course China would have helped India liberate themselves from the British. Why didn't Bose make alliance with the Chinese? Maybe he should have, if he was such a great leader.
How could he communicate with Mao across all the terrain
Doesn't have
from
to be
Tibet
Mao, even Shanghai. I mean, anything but Japan.
or anything but Japan? How could Mao support Bose in India? Like, what kind of mental gymnastics are you trying to pull? The Soviets wouldn't help. Mao couldn't help at all.
I'm saying, listen, it's very clear from the trend of history, Britain was not planning on keeping its overseas direct empire. I mean, in Africa, it's embarked on its decolonization. It was planning the same for India. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Because the Americans, under Roosevelt, objected to the European empires. America is the factor you're missing here. America wanted India's independence. That's what you're missing. So, I don't buy this idea that what Bose did was necessary for India's independence. I don't buy that at all. I think India would have become independent either way. The only difference is that Bose was trying to make India some kind of ally of Japan's greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere or whatever, and be basically an accomplice to the imperial Japan hegemon's plans for the region.
So what about the INC's continuation of English institutions? Like
but that's the whole point.
The Gandhi family
revolution
clique continued until the 1970s.
That's the point I'm trying to communicate to you. India's real revolution, India's real anti-colonial movement would have to be from the ground up. And yeah, if you need foreign help for that, just like the Chinese needed help from the Soviets, the Chinese would probably be more than happy to assist the Indians toward that end.
Okay. And so do you, from what you've gathered, would you claim Bose is some sort of fascist or Hitlerite, as some people are claiming here?
I don't know enough about him to say that, but I do think he's a loser in history because he lost. Saddam was a loser because he lost. Franco was a loser because he also lost. Why is there this cult of losers that's starting to emerge in the infrared server? That is the question we're here to... I mean, what is with this thing where you fixate on this relatively maligned historical figure? Like, Flame of Liberation is really the guy who started it with Saddam, right? He started with Saddam, then he creates a cult of Saddam. Based on what? What's the relevance? Why not learn from the failure and move on and try to do something better? I don't like this cult of losers.
The problem is
they're trying to make it seem like this guy, Stalin, was a loser. He wasn't a fucking loser. Stalin was a huge
How am I fucking saying Stalin was a loser?
I'm just saying Stalin was not like Bose. He wasn't like Franco. He wasn't like Saddam. He wasn't like these other people. He was a winner. He actually won. He didn't.
And Mao wasn't Stalin. Stalin wasn't Mao.
And Mao was also a winner. Mao was a winner too, by the way. Mao was a winner.
Yeah, but Mao was very close. Mao was this close to losing, and you would regard it the same way if he lost.
I think Mao was a winner. 100% winner. Winner material.
Yeah, because the annals of history guaranteed by miraculousness that he won.
Yeah, I believe in
which wouldn't have happened without Japanese assistance, which you cannot deny. Mao could not have achieved national leadership without the Japanese occupying and weakening the right KMT and the right deviants. Not even the fucking pro-Soviet faction within Mao's clique, which wanted to give up lands to the Soviets.
That's like a chicken-egg, whatever, stupid dilemma, because it's like, well, the KMT also wouldn't have existed without the significance of Japan's, modern... I mean, even the Chinese communists learned from, before Imperial Japan, the second iteration of it at least, in the 10s and the 20s. Yeah, Japan was like the center of Asia because it was the closest to the West. So that was something that was going to happen inevitably is what I'm trying to say. Japan had it was preying on China. That was inevitable. So you're saying, oh, Mao wouldn't have rose to power without Japan invading. The KMT wouldn't have existed without that wider context that gave rise to the Japanese invasion. So that's what you're missing.
Yeah, but the problem with your argument that we cannot venerate people who lost in history, like, for example, you could just say, oh, Sankara was a loser. Mobutu was a loser. Not Mobutu. Lumumba was a loser.
Here's the difference. Thank you so much, TX. Appreciate you. Listen, here's the difference, okay?
Long live the new China of the
ultimate
21st
difference
century.
is going to be this.
Long live Xi Jinping. Long
you go
live
to Burkina Faso today,
long live Mao
and
Zedong.
Sankara
Long
is
live the People
revered
Republic
as
of
a
China.
hero.
We'll do
Okay?
it. Down with
You
the
go there
bourgeois
today,
and parliamentary
and everyone in
democracies.
Burkina Faso, you ask them, what's our political future? They're like, we got to learn from Sankara and carry that forward, right? Now, you contrast that. Go to Iraq today and ask people about Saddam. Some people may be nostalgic for him, right? But there's no real... It's not like he's provoking these big ideas among masses of people. Oh, yeah, we got to... Nobody believes you can go back to Saddam in any meaningful sense.
But the difference with Saddam is we know for a fact that he was propagated by the CIA. We know for a fact that he overthrew the leftist faction within the Ba'athist party. He was a right deviationist, supported by the CIA, and as soon as he got power, he executed all the meaningful Ba'athists who supported unification with Egypt and the United Arab States.
It's similar in the case with Franco. You know, there's a difference between a leader who's successful and then, but what is this reverence of this cult of... I mean, listen, what is significant about Bose being upheld today? What is significant about that?
He left.
What? Maybe
he
it was
left.
a mistake.
He's in the show
Probably a
queue.
mistake. All right. What is significant? Why the need to exonerate Bose and the collaboration with Imperial Japan? Couldn't you at least say, "Oh, I wanted it. It's good for anyone to fight for India's independence, but the whole alliance with Imperial Japan was a mistake"? Why is that something that needs to be defended?
Okay, let me tell you this. First, let me get my barbell, and I'm going to do curls whilst I tell you this. So first off, you need to realize that just because Bose didn't achieve his aims, the intentions were there. But the problem is British propaganda and the way Indian society was organized couldn't allow him to penetrate the Indian subconsciousness. He only had like 10 years to achieve this, even less. And of course, the British, like I'm saying, did not allow for Indians to hear his message. And when they did, after the trials that tried to, let me find the conviction they were given for. Yeah,
okay, so Sungrass, maybe I admittly I don't know that much about Bose.
The indictment against the generals was waging a war against the king emperor. And I could easily say...
I don't know that much about Bose. Sungrass, you want to take the floor, and what do you have to say about this? Because all I know, the only information I'm getting is that Bose was a guy, the Indian National Movement or whatever, the army, and he was collaborating with Imperial Japan to liberate India. I mean, I get the whole thing that Gandhi was a cuck. I have no objections to that. It's just, what do you have to say, Sungrass? Maybe you can illuminate it a little better for us.
I just think that allying yourself with the tiger is a bad idea. Mao was not a fucking dumbass. He didn't ally with the Japanese. I don't know anything about this fucking Bose guy. I'm not Indian history nerd or whatever. But I think allying yourself with Japan is a stupid idea.
Yeah, that seems to be my view as well, right?
I think the important question here is that, like, this guy has yet to provide any evidence to prove that Bose would not end up becoming, or is not any different from just being an Indian version of Stepan Bandera or Wang Jingwei in China.
Well, I just said that his generals and his ideology were pro.
It has nothing to do with ideology, dude.
Let me
and it doesn't matter
let me simplify this.
Ideology
I'm explaining to you the
has.
problem. All right, Sovet. Bose's,
the INC had to suck them ideology.
Let me continue, okay? Bose's alliance with Japan was a failure objectively, right? Okay, that happened in the past. It was a failure. Now, meanwhile, the legacy of Japan's atrocities for the Chinese and for the Koreans and for other people in East Asia and South Asia, I mean, it's very clear. And the legacy of that is very clear, right? So why do you need to die on the hill of offending Chinese and Koreans and others by saying, oh yeah, if I were to go back in time, I would have... I mean, what is the point of saying that? What significance does that have here and now? What is the implication of that right now? You see the problem?
No. India is its own front. China is its own front. The Chinese could have beaten the Japanese all it wanted. The thing I'm saying is...
But this happened in the past. You're making it seem like this is happening now, and it's not. It happened in the past. So why are you trying to exonerate the Japanese? Effectively, it's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of like, oh yeah, the Japanese aren't that bad. Can you see how that's not a disaster in the eyes of someone who's Chinese or Korean?
Well, I could say the same thing. If I were a Ukrainian, I would say to you, oh, isn't it harmful that you're defending Glover's comments on the Holodomor, the supposed Holodomor?
No, not true. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Dude,
why are
dude,
you
why are
that's
you
where you lose me.
equivocating
No,
same conviction?
no. That's where you lose me. You're trying to compare the claims about Stalin in relation to Ukraine to the actual real atrocities committed by Japan against the people of East Asia, as if that's even close to being comparable, and it's not. Let me tell you, you know, we are talking about a systemic policy of extermination, enslavement, and subjugation based on a satanic, hyper-modern ideology adopted by the Japanese. I mean, we are talking about one of the world's most underrated evils in all of human history. I mean, we are talking about the return of Satan on Earth, the incarnation of Satan. That's literally, I mean, the Imperial Japan was probably the most evil empire in the history of humanity that I can think of. And yes, even in some degrees, in some aspects, they were even worse than the Nazis, right? So that's very clear to me. So
but
I'm trying to
cut from
understand
the
how
same
that's
cloth.
how is
They're
that
cut
comparable?
from the same cloth
How
as
is
the
that
British.
how is that comparable to Stalin in relation to Ukraine? Is what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm not saying it's comparable. I'm saying I could make the same equivocation that you were placing
you
on
couldn't.
me.
No,
that
you
I'm
could not.
somehow,
No, you could
That
not.
I'm somehow
You could not.
offending Koreans and Japanese,
You could not.
Koreans and Chinese.
Soviet
No, I'm
state-
stating the case for both versus the incest clique of Gandhi and his buffoons
All
in the
right, nobody here
CPI who were
defends
supporting.
Gandhi. I don't defend Gandhi. I don't like Gandhi. No one here likes him. But why?
So do you support the position that the CPI was carrying out the positivist and Stalin line by wholeheartedly supporting the INC without objecting at all against the non-violence statements? The INC continued with the CPI for decades until the 1964 split, when the right deviationists in the party finally said, no, we want to wholeheartedly support the INC led by Sripad Amritange. So the point I'm making is that what good did the communist line in India have? Like, there are people claiming here the CPI benefited India by allying with
look,
Britain.
the Stalin line in China was not necessarily, conducive to Mao's success. Mao had to break with that line. So I understand that. I'm not saying dogmatically that everything that was aligned with the Soviets' position has to be upheld. But you need to talk about what does it mean to actually create an anti-imperialist movement. Why are you venerating Bose instead of saying a real anti-colonial movement, both now and in the past, would have been going down to the soil of the people and building a national movement from there?
So can you name one other person or one other organization in India during that time?
One may
Bose
very,
was
hold
the
on.
only one.
One may very well have not existed, but then if you want to talk about lost opportunities, why not try and reflect on the mistake of India's communists and say the Indian communists should have been more like the Chinese and went down to the countryside. Yeah, even if that means objecting to the orders from the Comintern and the Soviets, building an Indian national kind of movement, a communist movement in India with Indian characteristics. I mean, why? Because we're talking about missed opportunities in the past. This is my point. Bose did not succeed. And so therefore, when you're trying to say, oh yeah, Bose, you're talking about a missed opportunity because clearly he failed, right? So if we're going to pick and choose what missed opportunities we refer to, why not just say something like, we need to reflect on the failures of the Indian communists at that point in time. There may have not been anyone who was pursuing the correct line at that time, which, I mean, that doesn't seem to be all that hard to accept. It's like, Look at the state of India after the war. As you recognize, it's still controlled by the Anglo institutions. It was not and Bose was failed. He was a failure. It wasn't successful. So you need to reflect on the failures instead of trying to. I mean, look, I get that people don't like Bose, but that's not a hill to die on to defend him just because others don't like him, because he still failed. Defending him on the internet isn't going to change that failure.
Saying like Bose is some sort of god to be venerated. The problem is the way people try to analyze the annals of history. I agree with you. The Indian communists should have adopted the Maoist
It
line.
almost looks
But
like
then
he
there
was
are,
won over by the Germans.
I can't say the
Bose
word
was integrated into the
in
European
the chat,
elite.
like Boba
He
Lover
never could have
saying,
been a Mao.
"Oh, the Stalin line was completely correct. It should have been wholeheartedly adopted in India." When the material conditions and the political institutions in India, the colonial overreach in India was completely different from the way that Spain was, and how it was the correct line to support the Republicans and the Spanish communists against the Francoists, unlike some, I cannot say the word, are saying, like Babalos was. So yeah, I agree. A similar but not identical Maoist position would have been the ideal, but we can't talk about ideals. We can only talk
but
about
that's my
people.
problem. You are talking about an ideal because ultimately Bose failed. So treating him as anything but a failure is just an ideal. So if you're going to pick and choose your ideals, you may as well have a good one instead of choosing one that is objectively going to destroy the diplomatic relations within the infrared community between the Indians, the Chinese, and the Koreans.
But there is no other person you can look up to.
Why is there a need to look up to someone? Yes, you can look up to some ancient Indian warrior in history and look up to them. Why do you need to look up to someone in India's recent modern history to be... I mean, it's the problem with the Saddam worshippers and the Franco worshippers and these other worshippers. It's completely pointless. Why do you need to look up to anyone? Why, you know what I mean? Like, look up to Stalin if you I need an Indian guy to look up to. Okay, I'm sure there's plenty in Indian history to look up to that didn't collaborate with Imperial Japan and weren't failures. Plenty of successful Indian warriors to look up to in history. Plenty.
Okay, but those came after the war, like BTR, who
even India's pre-modern history, you can look up to them. I mean, if it's about I need something to look up to invigorate my sense of Indian national pride and willingness to fight for my country. I mean, there's plenty you can draw from. India's a thousands-year-old civilization. You don't have to die on the hill of some failed endeavor by Bose. That's what I'm trying to say.
But it would be stupid of me if I was a Burmese and I wouldn't say that, fuck, I'm forgetting the name. The first
but it
leader...
was a failure. Hold on, it was a failure though.
No, it was not.
Yeah,
Still, it wasn't a failure because no. So what were the whites in Burma doing? All they did was always say, "Oh, the moderates are
European elite
were opportunists, although they were pragmatically supporting the Japanese at first. But then when they realized that Britain would finally have to be forced to give them independence because the Japanese finally gave the Burmese a taste of freedom, although it wasn't, of course, pure freedom, but political freedom, unlike the British, who were intent on keeping political and economic control, whilst the Japanese would have for sure kept economic control and military.
Okay, whatever. But Burma's independence was very quickly deposed of, and that's why it was a failure.
But the person that Burmese look up to is still Aung San.
And there is no one else. They can look up to whatever they want, but then you're basically looking up to a corpse. Looking up to a failure. You want to be successful, look up to someone who's a winner.
So I could just say the same thing for Stalin. He failed by allowing
Stalin won, but he still won.
Khrushchev took power after him. I could say the same thing, that he failed. Like Aung San.
Yeah, look, Stalin was critiqued by Mao.
You cannot see that there's a similar equivocation
No,
I could make.
Stalin succeeded, but he also made some mistakes. This initiative to Burmese independence failed. Being 1 year or 2 years independent is not a success. Sorry to say, it's not.
But the Burmese could not guarantee that independence, unlike the Soviets, who had an economic and political structure that was
okay. Look,
rooted.
listen. You can get into the history all you want. Anyone who cast their lot with Imperial Japan failed. So the lesson we learn from that is, look, I'm an Arab. Arabs have a problematic historical relation to Hitler in some regards, not completely. From what I know, a lot of the Arab world was against Hitler. Some of them, though, were sympathetic with the way the Germans were fighting, France and Britain. It's very kind of common sentiment, somewhat common sentiment in the Arab world to say, yeah, I'm so glad that Hitler was fighting these people who were occupying our countries. But when you actually get to the authoritative Arab national movements, the communist movements, the SSNP, the Nasserists, even the Baathists, right? And you ask them about Hitler, they're like, look, that's the past. That was clearly a mistake because Hitler was a disaster. He was a failure. He attacked the Soviets. He was a horrible, no good guy. We don't want to do that Hitler stuff. We're not here to idolize Hitler. The Iraqi officers that were trying to work with the Germans who completely failed, I mean, there's not going to be huge portraits of them sitting in an Arab Red Square anytime soon because they're like, you know what? That was a failure. We're looking forward to the future. We're not Nazis. We don't want to be Nazis. The collaboration with the Germans didn't go anywhere. So it's like, I would understand if it was kind of like that. But in your case, you're trying to exonerate the collaboration with the Japanese. Like, imagine I'm talking to Russians.
I don't care about, listen, I don't care whether Japan would be communist, fascist, democratic, liberal,
yeah, I get that you're trying to say
it makes no sense.
Listen.
No difference from me.
What
my
you
view,
what you should care
my
about,
view
what you
is
should
the
care
realist
about,
perspective.
what you should care about though is that you're waging an attack against the Chinese and the Koreans when you are defending a pragmatic alliance with Imperial Japan. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, I'm not. I could say Mao.
You know what? You know what you're missing. You know what you're missing is that you're missing the fact that Japan and Great Britain are essentially the same force. They are the same force.
I agree.
No, you don't agree because you're saying one is better than the other. It's pragmatic.
I am not saying one is better than the other.
If you're choosing one, you're choosing the other.
I
think so. I agree with that.
I'm talking about the on the line
you.
situation.
He's talking about Fauzi
for example,
Mufti Muhammad
what was
Amin al-Husseini, Rashid Ali, Yunus Bari, Fakhri al-Baraudi,
for example, the Ottomans. What choice did they have? They had to either get fucked by the Russians and have the Russians liberate all of the Balkans, quote unquote, liberate, but that's another topic. Or ally tactically with the devil that they know, the British and the French. Now, this is purely unideological. This is the Metternich approach of simply choosing
it's
powers that will balance out.
It's the jibber jabber approach, okay? It's the
jibber jabber approach that kept Europe at peace for 100 years, unlike the post-war.
No. Because
post-war idealism
you're trying to die on the hill of Imperial Japan, which no longer exists. China and Korea still exist. So what you're effectively doing is you're saying, I want to ally right now with what? Some elements of the Japanese deep state allied to America?
No, because saying? Current Japan... No. Japan has no place in geopolitics. Japan is simply, in its current form, dependent on U.S. hegemony.
Okay,
so
why can't we say Imperial Japan was a disaster and move on? Why can't it be that simple?
I am not referring to the ideology or the institutions.
I know you're not.
I don't care. I don't.
No, sometimes you're being
do-
a puzzle piece right now, because sometimes it's literally that simple. Because you have to understand what you're communicating. You're doing a lot of intellectual jibber jabber. You need to understand what you're actually in practice communicating. You're saying something that's pointless. What is the practical meat and potatoes consequences of what you're saying? That's what you have to ask. I know you're trying to intellectually die on some hill, and it's consistent logically and intellectually. But why, though? What's the practical result? What's
because
your
there
point?
needs to be a
What's your point?
positivist.
Why don't you
There needs
build...
to be
No.
a positivist structure that we need to follow, just like the Stalin line. There needs to be something not based on ideology or based on the
So
way
you're
the
saying
state
you think
conducts
India
itself.
can replicate what Bose did now?
No, because it's a
So
different
what's the
condition that
fucking
we
point
live
then?
in.
Then what's the point?
The point is there needs to the jibber jabber that is Gandhi and his clique that has been venerated and propped
Okay,
up
I
by
agree.
the
Fuck
Anglosphere.
Gandhi. Okay, fuck Gandhi. I agree. I don't like Gandhi. So why don't you
Okay,
focus
but your position
more...
isn't any different than Samira's, who was saying, "Oh, but the INC was correct in supporting the Indian INC against Japan because the Japanese imperialists and this and that." But then again, we have places like, okay, so the Japanese lost. That's why we shouldn't venerate Bose. But what if, in the case of the Russian-Ukraine special military operation, Russia loses? It could very well happen. There is the
No, it won't.
possibility.
Can't happen. No.
No,
Unless the Russian people are
anything can
destroyed.
happen
No,
in the
can't
geopolitical
happen.
sense.
Unless the
Everything.
Russian people are destroyed.
The least likely
It's
thing
not
can
possible.
always happen.
I
The
don't think
least
it's
likely,
possible.
that's all I would say. The difference is, whatever happens with the war, I will always support the Donetsk, Luhansk People's Republics. It wouldn't matter if Russia was led by a fascist state, a communist state, Putin's Russia, liberal Russia, whatever.
All right, listen, it's not about
The
ideology.
struggle
Okay,
for national
okay.
liberation
Listen.
always comes
I
on
don't like
top.
the jibber jabber. I'm hearing too much ideological phrases. I don't like being overwhelmed with all these phrases. Okay, I want to focus on meat and potatoes. And listen, the difference is you don't have to be part of the cult of Gandhi and all the implications of that. Why don't you focus more on trying to build something new instead of looking toward failed leaders in the past? What can you learn from Bose? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
Okay, what can I learn from Bose?
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I can learn. Okay, why didn't Bose succeed? Well, first, although he had the opportunity to lead the INC, he allowed for the Gandhi clique and the pro-Anglo forces in the INC to take hold. Now, it's not like he had foresight, so I don't know how you could prevent that unless you go and do a full Stalinist purge like Stalin did, which I'm not saying is any sort bad, but you couldn't do that in India's condition of colonial backwardness. So I don't know how.
In so many words, just tell me what you can learn from... You're an Indian patriot, and you want to liberate India from the British Empire, and you want to make India great and all this stuff. So what are you going to learn from Bose right now? What's the takeaway?
That you cannot support the one that feeds your hand who also steals from your hand. So,
what does that
for
mean?
example, the one that... I don't know what...
Okay, what can you learn
There's
from
a Chinese
Bose?
Proverb I cannot fucking...
What can you... Okay,
for the
hold on.
life
What
of me.
what can you learn from Bose besides him not being Gandhi? That's a better question for you.
That's just like in the case with Mao, with Stalin, the revolution does not come with white gloves worn. It comes through the barrel of a gun.
That's not telling
whether
me
it be
anything.
that.
I'm not hearing anything from
These
that.
are useless platitudes.
Yeah, what... Okay, again,
This is
what about
the
Bose?
same.
So are you saying you want... What about Bose's strategy is successful and you can learn from it? Because I can learn from Mao's strategy. I can learn from Stalin's strategy and the wisdom of like Stalin's... Like, they have successful things they did that I can learn from. What about Bose was successful you can learn from?
Like, okay, I don't think Bose, like the situation he was put in, he couldn't perform the same thing that Mao or Stalin could have, given his situation. He was exiled by the British.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, look, dude.
Do you think,
matter.
even with all the persecution against Mao, he still could fight in the jungles
Dude, if
of
it wasn't
or
Mao,
mountains
maybe
of
it would have been
Chongqing
someone else.
and move into Shanxi?
Dude, if it wasn't Mao, maybe it would have been someone else. Okay, we've gone through this a long time.
Yeah, I know. History isn't made by people. I
You're
agree.
just making excuses for a fucking loser. Oh, if Mao was a loser, he'd be a loser, but he wasn't. And Bose was a loser. So we have to ask the question.
Brother, look up to and
right?
uphold Bhagat Singh, communist/Stalinist
We gotta
hero,
ask.
whose
Thank you
writings
so
were
much,
being revisited by the
Star. Thank you
farmers
so
in
much,
the
Star.
2020
Appreciate you.
protests.
Yeah. So it's like a Star gave me an example. A guy named Bhagat Singh, who farmers in the 2020 protest were looking back to because it was useful. What's useful about Bose? What can you learn from him? What can you take away? Why is he a thought leader? Ask yourself that question. Why is he a thought leader?
Hey, but Bhagat Singh, all he did was murder a cop. What the?
Because he probably wrote things that are useful for revolutionaries.
Okay, even fucking thinkers like Spengler wrote things. Did he achieve anything with that other than cultivating the Nazis' ideology? No.
No.
I don't fucking care about writers. They can write their sorry ass shit.
This
I
is
don't
Mussolini
fucking care.
in action. This is Mussolini socialism in action. This is Giovanni Gentile, actual idealism. You don't care about learning and studying.
No.
You only care about launching yourself into action and failing immediately like Bose did. Why don't you sit down and be a scholar?
At least if I launch myself into action, I can learn from it. I can learn.
So what do you learn from Bose? Okay, what do you learn from Bose then?
Well, I learned that India's conditions versus China's conditions, Mao's applications
what do you
can be
learn
applied
from Bose?
in the same way.
All right, 2023 India right now. What do you learn from Bose? How does he help you?
That's it. For example, India, rather than allying with Russia like they've been doing for the past century, tactically, although playing with the West at the same time, they should be working with the East. Instead of Japan, in this case, it would be China, because they are geopolitically closer and have geopolitical interest in having an India that is working bilaterally having trade ties.
Okay, so if you want India to work closer with China, how are you gonna deal with? How are you gonna, exonerate Bose publicly and not piss off the Chinese and damage relations with them?
Well, give me proof that the current PRC would give a shit about Bo's legacy in China. Bose never fought in China. Bose never genocided Koreans.
I know,
Bose never gave a shit.
I think China is a little bit sensitive when it comes to the legacy of Imperial Japan, because as you may not know here, there is this cult of Japan in Asia that's centered in the Japanese deep state and has some currency in South Asia as well, which is kind of just trying to exonerate Imperial Japan, which is kind of geopolitically opposed to China's interests as an ideology.
Okay, but I don't want... But here's the thing. I do not want to exonerate Japan or their war crimes or the biological unit they had. I am not defending these. How can I fucking defend things that are written on paper, just like the fucking Holocaust? I cannot. I am just arguing on the basis of pragmatism, of what you can do in the immediate sense. Bose could not achieve that successfully, but it has been tried in places like Cuba, where, at first...
All right, so you're saying your lesson from Bose is to be pragmatic. Why do you need Bose to learn that lesson?
Because people like Sunkare or Mubute, as soon as they started showing their true colors and showing that they will align with one bloc implicitly, they fucking got ousted. They fucking got themselves shot. They got 2 bullets in the back of the head and was declared a suicide.
I
That's
can't
what I
deal with this cult of loser shit. It's just like, I don't care about the cult of losers. Where's the success? Show me the success. I'm not seeing any success.
Okay,
I'm just seeing...
what success you want? Okay, for example, Mustafa Kemal in Turkey. What about him? You think he's not successful, waging a guerrilla warfare against
Okay,
the
he
British?
was, and
Even
then Turkey joined NATO and was hijacked.
yeah, because
by
of
the
the
Anglos.
of Ismet.
You want to know the truth? You want to know the truth? The British let him win. The British let him win. That's the truth.
Oh, the British let him win. So
They
what?
did. They did. Do you know anything about the war?
Who
Do you know
the
anything?
fuck supported the Turks? The Soviets. Without the Soviets,
Yeah, I think he's trying to say the British didn't put that much effort into trying to...
Yeah, they really did not.
Yeah, the British
Because-
got what they wanted
why?
by taking...
Why?
the
They
whole-
were focused on the Russians. They already had Constantinople. They had already had it locked and key under the Straits.
Yeah, and you know what
Commission.
they did with it? They didn't do anything with it. They just let the Turks take it.
Yeah, because at first it was promised to the Russians, and Russia got fucked. So they didn't have any fucking clue what to do with it.
They could have
Like,
given it to the
they
Greeks
had
and
no
they actively
plan
chose
for
not
it.
to. They could have given it to the Greeks and they actively chose not to.
They
They
would
could have
given it
supported,
to
they
the
actually
Greeks
could have
afterwards.
supported Greece.
The problem was the Greeks
All right,
pissed off the
we're
British.
past. All right, we're past the relevance of this. We're ending this debate with Sovet. I think I've tried to make my peace as much as I could. We don't want this jibber jabber, this Imperial Japan jibber jabber. Okay, period. Now let's go and let's bring up Babasla to come and stand to trial for the Franco shit. Okay? Now, this is the one everyone's been waiting for. A lot of you guys have been scapegoating Babasla. But I'm not trying to single him out, but it is an example of the deviationism going on in the infrared community and the infrared server. So let's go ahead and bring on Babasla, the resident... I'm sorry, I just saw a meme that was... I have to show you guys this meme. Not to shit on Babasla, but Babasla does this thing where he'll make an infographic for Franco, putting some quote that seems to kind of be somewhat positive toward the Soviets or whatever. And then he'll use it, just like Flame of Liberation does, by the way. And then someone in the server decided to apply that logic to George Soros, and I just saw it passing by in the chat, and I thought it was really funny, alright? Because, honestly, yeah, this is, like, it's true. Like, you know, like, this is the equivalent of that in my eyes. It's just so fucking silly and annoying. And it's... you know what I mean? I'm sick of the info... And by the way, no matter the outcome of this debate, I am unilaterally banning... Thank you so
Stalinist
much.
takeover of America when?
Okay, I am issuing right now so everyone can hear it. I am unilaterally banning all Franco infographics, period. Because they're fucking annoying me personally. They are spammed every day so often, so consistently, and I'm banning them completely because I'm sick of seeing them. Imagine being a random guy who joins the infrared server, interested in a futuristic-oriented Marxism-Leninism, and you just see a bunch of fucking spam of Franco's face and some fucking quote. That's not what we're here to be. Just because you're one guy.
Base.
Thank you, Mayor.
Abse loudly despise the Spanish Republic, but being against Franco is kind of a
Thank you, Mayor.
no-brainer.
It's like, you can't just be one guy who likes Franco and you impose that to define the character of our entire community. Dude, that's selfish. We're not going to ban you for your opinion, but you're not allowed to try and hijack the whole infrared vision for this dumb LARP, okay? So I'm unilaterally banning the infographics forever. And no warnings. This is my last warning because I've already warned him before about it. This is my last one. No more Franco infographics. This is a Marxist-Leninist server, futuristic-oriented. We don't need these fucking stupid Flame of Liberation infographics. Period. Thank you, TX. Appreciate you.
Long live us.
Thanks, TX. But isn't TX also being accused of some shit? Or is that another guy? Now, TX has given me, like, a shit ton of money, so it's, you know, I don't know how much I can shit on him, because he's literally donated me, like, $300. But TX is also, TX, you need to get in VC too, and you're going to stand trial as well. You can't bribe me, dude. You can't bribe me, okay? You can't bribe me. All right? I'm incorruptible. I appreciate the money and I appreciate the support, but I'm not bribable, dude. I'm sorry. Thank you for the money, but come on, man. Can't be bribed here. All right, now we're going to have Babasla get in. All right, here it is. So what's this? So Babasla, I've told you the Franco stuff weeks ago, and you're still doing it. And now we've come to this. We've come here.
A debate on the Spanish Civil War, or?
Yeah, my thesis is that Franco was a puppet of Spain's landowner ruling class and Spain's royal family and their dynastic noble lineages and all that shit. And that's what Franco was during the Spanish Civil War. And that, moreover, the classification of Franco's side as nationalist is a complete lie. There's nothing nationalistic about them in particular. They were called that as a form of propaganda. Even the bourgeois Freemasons were bourgeois nationalists. So I'm not sure what the significance of that label is. I think Franco was just a parochial strongman. Now, do I think Franco was a fascist? Probably not, because fascism is ultimately about waging wars of aggression through the military-industrial complex. However, didn't Spain have a war, a colonial war, in the post-war period?
You're talking about the IFNI War?
Let me look it up, okay?
Can I tell you my main argument while you're doing that?
Wait. I have to find this, okay?
That was over West Sahara, I believe, and the whole thing is so complicated if you ask any Spanish person or indigenous person from that region, because
there's the IFNI War. Yeah, there was the Western Sahara. Yeah, those two.
I'm on my way to work, and now I was
there was a good
falsely
chunk of
accused by
indigenous who
Balboa
wanted to
for
be their
shutting
own
on
nation
Franco.
and not be a part of Morocco either.
What?
In terms of West Sahara, there was a lot of people who wanted to be like their own nation because they have their own ethnic
the Sahrawi
group.
movement, who I support, by the way.
So Morocco also was waging a colonial war. So it was kind of like both sides were pretty...
Yeah, but Morocco, as we know, is a fake puppet government of the French, the Spanish, and others. And I wholeheartedly support the Sahrawi people to this day, fighting against that.
So here's my argument. So firstly, our main contention is that I believe that Franco's faction in specific was the best faction to possibly come out of the Spanish Civil War. I believe that out of the nationalists, or you could call them rebels if you want, I believe that he was the best. Who else do you have in the nationalists? You have Ledesma. He was the one who wanted to ally with the anarchists. He all supported their program of extreme secularization. Closest thing to a Spanish Nazi, in my opinion. He had a few loyalists throughout Spain, but overall, Franco sidelined him and allowed for his demise. Otherly, you had Jose Antonio, who wasn't as bad as Ledesma, but he had a lot of qualms about industrialization. In terms of agrarian reform, he was better than Franco.
We're wasting time here. I don't care.
Okay, so I'll skip to the other part. Onto the Republicans. The Republicans, in my opinion, were irredeemably flawed in their regard to. I'm gonna speak referencing.
So focus on the Stalinist faction, which is what Infrared supports.
Okay, so
we don't care about the other guys. We like the Stalinists.
Okay, so just on the Stalinists. Okay, so Jose Diaz. I believe that he was flawed because I believe he is one of probably the best people within the Spanish Communist Party. But even he backed the right of the regional separatists to secede from Spain, and this would ultimately have led, in my opinion, to the disintegration of Spain as a country.
Wait. I gotta cut you off
link.
there. Because Lenin
Yeah.
supported the same thing for the former Russian Empire, and yet the Soviet Union unified it like never before when all was said and done. So how is that an indictment on Jose Diaz?
Well, because I believe because the nationalists in Spain were much more anti-communist explicitly, like especially among the Basque, especially at that time, they wouldn't have saw eye to eye with Jose
You
Diaz
could
at
say
all.
the same about the Ukrainians and all the other regions in this. Look, that's a temporary thing. The
Good
right to
morning,
self-determination.
Revolution.
Thank you so much, PJ. That would have been rectified down the line somehow. I'm sure there would have been some kind of conflict to rein that in. But
Right. So, yeah. So
yeah,
on the-
but when you have a monarchy rather than a nation state, you're going to deal with this tribute. I mean, same thing happened with the Russian Empire, right? But it was unified like never before. I don't see how that's an indictment on Jose Diaz.
I believe that overall the right to secession would have opened them up to foreign plays at Spain's like unity as a nation.
That's
but
what
moving
happened.
on,
What
I
same
would
thing
argue
happened
that.
to Russia, though.
Well, I think that in Spain's case, they would be surrounded by all these like Western nations that could easily
So was
play.
Russia.
No, Russia had the Eastern Bloc surrounded. Oh well, at the time, yeah.
No, Russia
but-
had very hostile powers surrounding it on the eve of the October Revolution. They had the German Empire, they had the Austria-Hungarians, they had the Romanians, they had the Czechs, the Slovaks. They had a lot of people that were against them right near their borders. The Poles.
All right, so even if I grant that, I would argue that still it's pretty irredeemable the fact that the PCE, the Spanish Communist Party, enshrined the idea that the North Africans were of a bestial instinct.
No, they didn't enshrine that. That was just dumb propaganda in war. That was
No,
not
I'll
enshrined.
post it right here.
How was that enshrined? I'm not denying that.
It's from their Central Committee manifesto. I'm posting it in the VC chat.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'll read it out if you want.
No, I'll read it out.
Okay, read it out.
The Ashes have. This is their manifesto.
In the 1930s, they adopted it in the 1930s, I believe.
Their traitors has not been extinguished. They opened the gates of Spain to the Arab, who sought to possess our fertile gardens. Okay, this is nationalist propaganda. I mean, ironically, they're more nationalist, honestly, even a little, xenophobic and racist than the Franco guys. But they're not enshrining this view. They're just using it as nationalist propaganda against Franco and the rebels who, you got to think about this. Think about the implication. Who's the real fucking nationalists here, right? The Spanish Stalinist patriots were internal to the business of Spain. Franco can't rally the peasants, so he's got to go to Morocco and he's got to go get the Arabs to fight for him. What kind of nationalist is that? He's clearly not popular enough to rally an army of the Spanish peasant. He's not some Spanish Mao. If you're a real patriot, you're going to go down to the soil of your own people to get your army. And I do not condemn
Ledesma
Spanish
wanted
Communist
to ally
Party.
with both communists and anarchists because he saw them as a better option than liberal capitalists like
Okay,
Franco.
this is like
However, that was
infighting,
before the war broke
rebel
out.
infighting.
Quit taking things out of context and twisting truths, Kabbalah.
TX, thank you for the 50, dude, but you're not exempted from the line struggle. You got to get in VC, dude. Thank you for the 50, though. Listen, because this is just some infighting going on among the, the infrared right faction, I guess. I don't know. Listen.
Oh no, I hate that guy.
But we're not. I might bring him in VC, and you guys can go at it, just so we can observe what's going on. But because I don't even know what's going on here, right? But anyway.
I would argue that the Republic had no support in the countryside. It was just a completely urbanoid movement.
Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. But people like Jose
alienating
Diaz,
all the.
Hold on. But people like Jose Diaz and the Stalinizers were precisely the only force who would have been capable of rallying the Spanish countryside. And if you want my take on the Spanish Civil War, it was a mistake because the Stalinists did not hastily do that fast enough. They were stuck in the Soviet Union's own internal struggle going on at the same time with the Great Purges and other things, and they would have to have rapidly kind of accelerated the pace by which they really purged the internal leftist enemy before they could embark on a kind of campaign to rally the... That's what they wanted to do, by the way. The Stalinists hated what the leftists were doing. They hated how the leftists were desecrating the religious stuff. They wanted to win the middle peasants of Spain. That was their goal. And the bourgeoisie...
Well, I'd argue that they copied the Comintern doctrine, had no independent basis in Spanish rootlessness,
that may
just
be
like
true,
the communists in Afghanistan.
Listen, but the main thing, that's not the main thing, though. The main problem was that they were surrounded by two enemies. On top, they had the Spanish liberal bourgeoisie, the liberal ones, who hated the Stalinists because the Stalinists wanted to empower the Spanish middle peasant. Then on the other hand, you had the ultra-leftists and the lumpen anarchists who also hated these Stalinists for the same reason, because they wanted to be the urban lumpen criminals and, scumbags. And they also hated how the communists had this potential to unleash the Spanish peasant, right? And then on the other hand, the rebels, who you seem to be defending here, I hate to break it to you, the rebels were the pawns of the Spanish landowning class of aristocratic nobility and the fucking monarchy. So it's like the only potentially authentic popular force at this time that represents the Spanish people, the Spanish middle peasant, the average ordinary Joe in Spain, is the Stalinists.
Well, so to go back to what you said, the lumpen anarchists were the strongest element, like the non-state leftist element, the CNT. Engels wrote about it in the Bakunis at Work.
Yeah, I know, but that was a problem.
And even if the land reform with Francisco Franco wasn't strong, it still did a good job of distributing the land. In Galicia, you had everyone owning.
No, it didn't, because Franco's land reform was giving peanuts to people to colonization efforts instead of actually addressing the more fundamental problem of this entrenched elite. This establishment.
Yeah. I'd have to push back on the fact that the Stalinists were doing a good job at winning over the peasants. I'd say that the nationalists did a better job at this, paying wages on time to peasants, incomes. They didn't confiscate the peasant property and requisitions.
Then why did they have to import an army from Morocco if they were doing such a good job?
Because it was just an added advantage they had. The Moroccans,
why would you need that advantage if they're going to be more popular at winning over the average peasant than the communists? Why do you got to import foreigners to fight for you?
Well, I'd say that because Franco had these strong ties with the troops in Morocco, he was the head of the army of Africa.
Why couldn't he have strong ties with his own? Why couldn't he have strong ties?
They were the most effective troops in the Spanish Civil War. Like, they were just great fighters.
So he couldn't have ties.
It would make no sense not to use them.
So, he couldn't have ties with his own people. So he's
got and you saw a lot of deserters in the Republicans. So you can't ignore that. There were a lot of deserters.
Maybe. Look, I'm not here to say... I'm not the one creating a cult of the Spanish Republicans. As much as I would have given my lesson from that is the Stalinists should have more strongly asserted themselves. Because after all, who opened the gates for Franco? This is also something you're not neglecting to mention. There was a coup against the Negrin government by the anarchists and the liberal bourgeoisie combined. They overthrew the Spanish government because they said it was infiltrated by the Stalinists and it was a Soviet puppet. And they pretty much opened the doors for Franco to negotiate the terms of peace, which they failed in doing. So that's also a part you're missing. You're missing the part how the actual reason the Republicans lost in the Spanish Civil War is because the actual popular element of the Spanish Civil War, which was the Stalinist government, right? They were betrayed from within by the liberal bourgeoisie and the lumpen ultra-left scumbags. And that's my lesson from the Spanish Civil War. Fuck the leftists. Never ally with the liberal bourgeoisie under any circumstances. and leftists are your enemy. That's my lesson from the Spanish Civil War. But I'm not creating like a cult of something that failed. Spanish Republicans failed. There's a reason they failed, and I want to learn from that. But you're creating a cult of Franco, who was just a bastard at that. I mean, he was just a puppet of the Spanish necrotic, incestuous, ancient, dynastic, landowning class of
Also, I'd have to
parasites.
push back. Arabs only consisted 30,000 of Franco's army, which was overall 900,000 strong overall. So like that's like 90% or whatever Spanish compared to a marginal Arab North African aspect.
Okay, but you're missing
So
the
it's
point.
disingenuous
Franco
to
was
argue
a
that.
pawn of these spooky bloodsuckers in Spain. Just, you know, it's just like it's not even the ancient regime. It's some stuff after the Napoleonic Wars where all the monarchies in Europe were reshuffled. And it's all a fraud, by the way, because it turns out these monarchies have no legitimacy and no continuity before the Spanish. So it's like it's a complete, you know, it's a game. All the monarchies of Europe, all of them,
Well, I would
are all in
agree
bed
that
with
it was
each
due
other.
to his.
They're
I would
all
say
in bed
you're
with each
right
other.
on that. It was due to
Spain's
his misled
monarchy.
conservative nature. On
What?
this point, I would say you're right that it was due to his misled conservative nature. But I would have to argue that this doesn't negate the fact that overall, this Franco led to a more independent Spain than because of his pragmatic policies and the possibility of
wrong.
creating a non-aligned
Franco had to give the U.S. a base in Spain.
a base
return.
which in 1966 he would ban NATO aircraft from going over or to
Okay,
Spanish
but he
territory.
still gave the U.S. a military base in return for giving him.
All right, well,
loans.
that was a small concession for
I don't think that was a
industrialization.
small concession. I think
Well,
that's
if he's gonna make it basically like not even useful to America by cutting off the possibility of NATO-aligned aircrafts from
no.
going
I think
to
it was
or
still useful because it actually proved that when all is said and done, Spain would at least when they're very
also you're
reluctant.
ignoring like the big fact, the Islero program, Proyecto Islero, which was developing a path for nuclearization of Spain, a nuclear arsenal, so Spain could not only be the 8th largest industrial power, but would have nuclear arms to be a major
Okay,
power
Spain
within.
being the 8th largest industrial power in the Cold War is not a huge achievement.
And well,
Considering the
clearly the
utterly
CIA saw it as a threat because they killed Carrero Blanco, who created the program, and then the successor to who was going to be the successor to Franco. They killed Tejedor, who brought about the.
I'm not denying any of
position.
that. I'm not denying any
Yeah.
of that. I'm not denying of that. I'm aware
And
that
I'd say he was a bit. He was like Bismarck. He was a developmentalist. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think Franco belongs at best to the generation of marginally post-war U.S. aligned strongmen who the U.S. then turned on later, just like Chiang Kai-shek, just like Park. I forgot his name. But there's a lot of other people that fit the even Pinochet was similar to this, right? Eventually, yeah, he was totally appointed by the CIA. Then eventually they got rid of him and just deposed of him. There's a reason for that. I get it. It has to do with the open society and globalism and democracy. But Franco couldn't protect Spain enough.
Spain was embargoed by the USA until the 1950s. He gave this one concession, but he had to create a domestic sovereign industry.
He got a fuck ton of loans from the U.S.
And if you look at the Spanish National Institute of Enterprise, this was key in developing the Spanish industry to make it an independent country, not just a country relying on foreign
it still
trade.
needed U.S. loans to develop its industry.
I disagree. I think it was due to the national enterprises.
Okay, then look up the share. Okay, then look up how much loans Spain took from the U.S. to industrialize. Since you have
most of the industrialization was done in the 1950s, and America only got done with the embargo in the 50s. So your point is kind of moot there.
Why is it moot?
Because Spain was still being embargoed in the 50s.
But Spain got its funding to industrialize itself from America. You're saying Spain was already industrialized?
No,
even
Spain,
before America lifted its embargo? Because that's not true.
No, most of the industrialization was occurring in the 50s.
With the help of U.S. loans?
That was after.
Okay, so you're saying Spain, even before the U.S. embargo, was rapidly industrializing, correct?
Much of the work towards industrialization was
No,
occurring
that's
then.
that's ambiguous. What share of the industrialization in particular? Look, can you give me a chart to look at? Because you always have these charts and statistics and graphs. So let's see.
Yeah, okay, I can pull up something. I have it saved somewhere.
So I'm reading here that there was only an arms embargo. There wasn't a complete embargo economically.
All right, so
Only armaments were embargoed during the period of the Spanish Civil War. What is this other embargo you're talking about? That was an arms embargo, dude. Why would you... Am I missing something?
wait, hold on, find that chart for you.
No, wait. You just said the U.S. was embargoing Spain and wasn't funding them at all in the 1950s, which kind of changes the facts here. Thank you so much, TX.
I have a lot to say on Franco and how he was the worst of the nationalists, but I'm at work at the moment. However, Babala can debate me
All
on
right,
it
well,
next
he
Friday.
can debate you on it.
yeah.
then. Hold on. So
yeah, I'm I'm looking it up. So Truman especially had horrible relations with Francisco Franco, in due part because the fact that Truman was a Freemason.
okay,
So
no,
trade
we need
really
to get to the
didn't
meat and potatoes, okay? So by the early 1950s, per capita gross domestic product was barely 40% of the average for West European countries. The growth of the black market, food rationing, and widespread deprivation, gradual improvement began to take place. Then, after a decade, the regime took its first faltering steps toward abandoning its pretensions to self-sufficiency and toward inaugurating a far-reaching transformation of Spain's retarded economic system. That's their word, not mine. The pre-Civil War industrial production levels were regained in the early 1950s, which is pathetic, by the way, though agricultural output remained below that level until 1958. So Spain's agricultural output, according to this source, remained below its pre-Civil War levels until 1958. And then hold on. A further impetus to economic liberalization came in 1953, the signing of a mutual defense agreement, the Pact of Madrid, between the United States and Spain. In return for permitting the establishment of a military base in Spanish soil, this is, according to the source, September 1953. So you're getting the facts wrong here. You said,
No,
Spain...
actually, I do. So right here you have a chart which shows that industrialization was picking up already starting in the mid-1940s and picking up rapidly by the 1950s, even before that.
What am I looking at here? No, this is almost hilarious. What am I looking at here? Okay. So,
hold on.
you've got a few lines. So this is Sector Primero is the green one. What is this? This one seems like it's shrinking. Why is it shrinking? It's the agricultural sector. The secondary sector, I imagine, is the industrial sector. So we got a little loop-de-loop line. So here it is. It goes down to shit, and it even goes further down somehow. In the 40s and 50s, mainly, it's shit, and then it only regains its previous rate of growth by 1960 when it was being funded by the U.S. banks for direct investment into Spain's industry. So where is this narrative that most of the industrialization is going on in the 1950s? Because even if that was true, they already gave America a military base in 1953, more than $1 billion in economic assistance, which is a lot of fucking money at that time, flowed into Spain during the remainder of the decade. So between 53 and 58, the U.S. was giving them huge loans by the government, by the way. We're not even talking about the private sector right now. Spain's gross national product rose by about 5% a year. Not incredibly impressive. For example, Stalin's industrialization, we're talking about 10% growth rates.
Primary sector is
Mao's China, we're talking about 10% growth rates. This
No,
is
no,
not
so-
that
but
impressive.
I just- wait, you
This
didn't
is
even
with the
address
help of
how-
U.S.
so-
loans, by the way,
it
and
shows
access to global
industrialization
capital.
picking up before the U.S. aid. So primary sector would be agriculture. You have that. All right, so that was not great, but you have to admit how the industrialization was picking up years before the U.S. aid. Spain was barred from the Marshall Plan.
Listen.
Yep.
By 1950, it was starting to get slightly close to the
And
rate.
Truman withdrew the American ambassador.
Stop interrupting me. It was getting to the rate of growth that Spain was at before the Civil War, which it did not get to until 1960. That's not impressive, okay? Spain under Franco was a shithole, and that's a fact. The gross national product
Babala the puzzle
had
piece
a
dies on the hill of
5%.
agricultural
Thank you so
backwardness.
much,
A real leader
Bill.
would support national
complete
redemption for their
It was a
nation's lost.
backward country under Franco. From 1951 to 1956.
Yeah, this was the number of people employed increasing. It wasn't relating to the growth. This is the number of people employed in these sectors. So it showed there was a
Okay, then you
picking
gave me
up of
a
the number of people
meaningless.
employed
Then you gave
rapidly
me.
right after
Then
this.
you gave me a meaningless graph. Give me
So it
something.
just shows how he recovered the employment.
No,
pretty fast.
that's not what we were asking. We were asking for the rate of growth of the economic sectors. You gave me you lied about what you just gave me right now. I'm starting to notice some dishonest tactics from you.
No, I didn't say. I didn't say what.
First, it was this shit about the 1950s, which was completely
No,
fucking wrong.
can I tell you what?
Then it was
Can I
this
do-
bullshit. Hold on.
The
Then you
description- the
lied to
description-
me. Your
English-
infographics are a lie. It's all a lie. You fucking said the U.S. had an embargo on Spain. No, it didn't. It was an arms embargo. You said the U.S. didn't invest in Spain until the 1960s. Not true. They gave them $1 billion throughout the 1950s. You said
I didn't
most
say
of
that-
Spain's industrialization occurred in the 1950s. Even if that was true, they weren't autarkic and self-sufficient. They had foreign capital had full access to Spain during all these periods. Private capital had full access to Spain from international capital during these periods, but the U.S. government, to add insult to injury, gave them $1 billion fucking in addition to that. So Stalin and Mao, I'm going to tell you why Franco will never be one of the icons of the infrared movement. Because Stalin and Mao were cut off from all international capital, 10% growth rates in industrialization per year, cut off from the whole fucking world. Spain, backward shithole Spain, gets $1 billion in assistance, which is a lot of fucking money at this time in the 1950s, plus access to international capital
can you
and
source
direct
the US capital?
private,
Can you
hold
source
on,
the US
and
capital?
direct private foreign
You sourced
investment.
it in the VC.
And
Sourced
they
it in
have
VC.
and they have a measly 5% growth rate a year.
Source the U.S. capital in VC, so I can look at it.
Which U.S. capital?
Your claim about U.S. capital, the billions of U.S. dollars. Can you source it?
The $1 billion. It's on stream right now. The $1 billion that the United States gave to Spain in economic assistance.
And then, all right, so the recovery with the employment was done without any Marshall aid for Spain. The aid,
I don't care about
you have to
employment. I don't
understand.
care about Spain's employment. Franco could employ Spaniards to go grab a shovel and dig shit. I don't care. I care about economic.
The aid,
I care about
the aid
economic
Spain was
growth.
the-
Show me the
aid
economic growth.
was
Show me
later.
the industrialization.
The Marshall Plan delayed, so it was delayed. So he was able to accomplish a recovery before basically his version of the Marshall Plan then in terms of loans.
A recovery. Hold on. Spain was able to hold on. This is pretty rich. Spain was able to recover from before the Spanish Civil War, before the U.S. economic assistance, direct assistance by the U.S. government. What about What about foreign investment from private capital?
I'm looking up.
It's not impressive, by the way, to take 15 years to recover to where you were before a civil war when you're not cut off from the entire fucking world like the Soviets were, by the way. Look, the backwardness of agriculture and the land tenure system, all hallmarks of keeping intact a parasite class of agricultural landowners and aristocrats sitting and eating cheese on their extravagant mansions with their millions of acres of useless fucking land they're not even putting to work productively. This is what happens when Stalinists don't take over. This is exactly why Franco is a fraud, and he'll never ever be up there in heaven with Stalin and Mao. Farm productivity was low. A lot of tourists. Exports lagged. High domestic demand. Institutional restraints on foreign trade. Franco finally opted in favor of a group of neoliberals. Thank you, Carlo.
You were calling me a gusano, but you are a walking L, Lamau.
So, a debate took place within the regime over strategies for extricating the country from its economic impasse, and Franco opted in favor of a group of neoliberals. The group included bankers, industrial executives, some academic economists, and members of the semi-secret Roman Catholic lay organization Opus Dei. So, to translate that, only until Spain opened up did it make any progress in the economy. What makes its economy sovereign in particular then, right? During the 1957 to 59 period, known as the pre-stabilization years, lot of reforms for foreign private capital. Drastic remedies were required in Spain's isolation from the rest of Europe. In the process of liberalizing trade among their members, these organizations found it difficult to establish economic relations. Okay. Spain became an associate member of the Organization for European Economic Cooperation, the OECD, in 1961. And every developed country in the non-communist world had this. Spain joined the IMF and the World Bank in 1959. This is sovereign industrial development. I'm still waiting for how. These bodies immediately became involved in helping Spain to abandon their autarchical trade practices that had brought its reserves to such low levels. Spain was influenced by France. So this is a classic textbook Marshall Plan, U.S. semi-colony, pretty much. Euroid semi-colony. And then eventually, yeah, I agree with the American second phase of neoliberalism or whatever. They kind of cut their loose ends and went against all these strongmen they previously supported. Again, Chiang Kai-shek, Park, same. I'm not denying, by the way, that the CIA wasn't a huge fan of Franco because he wasn't fully in line, right? But that doesn't mean Franco is a model to cheer for, because even though he wasn't fully in line with U.S. imperialism, he still was responsible for the backwardness and stagnation of his country, because Franco doesn't need to be a puppet of U.S. imperialism when he's a puppet of Spain's own parasitical and ancient dynastic ruling classes and landowners. So that's the fucking problem, right? Now, I'm not going to be here and start, Franco was the worst guy ever.
Okay.
It's just that you're doing the opposite in the server. You're doing the opposite where you're constantly shilling for Franco, and it's at this point, it's making our server look like shit because it's in direct contrast with our vision. Just because Franco wasn't necessarily a fascist doesn't make him a fucking icon and model where you're going to put him in front of an infrared glow. Why would you do that?
Oh, I never did that actually.
Well, it's
I never-
someone's doing that.
Yeah, someone did that, but I would never do it. So
Thank
I'll
you, Johnny.
concede that a
Appreciate
lot
you.
of the industrialization later on did have to do with U.S. aid.
A misaligned
However,
actor
how
is
would
not
you
the
explain
same as a
how
malign
right after
against a king.
the Franco system got toppled, involved in the CIA, whatever, they started deindustrializing, and the PSOE government, Socialist Party government,
Because
was
you ignored
funded
what
by
I
the
just
German
said.
Democratic
No,
Party, started
Babasla.
deindustrializing.
Babasla. You ignored what I just said. In the second phase, or in the phase of U.S. neoliberalism, they began to dismantle some of their pillars of the Marshall Plan system. So they wanted to do that to France. May 68 in France was CIA shit. They didn't want de Gaulle. They started getting tired of de Gaulle. They started going against the South Korean dictator, Park, whatever. They started cutting all their loose ends, and yes, trying to deindustrialize all of these former kind of semi-colonies of the U.S. Marshall Plan system. So I'm not denying that they had it out for Franco at the later years and all this shit, and they assassinated people, and that Spain's liberal democracy was ushered in by the CIA, and they did deindustrialize Spain. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the fact that the U.S. could deindustrialize Spain is because it's the U.S. which pretty much industrialized it in the first place. Spain never developed a real sovereign kind of economic polarity like the Chinese and the Russians did. They never
But
did
you have
that.
to recognize that instead of receiving the Marshall aid funds, just with the USA able to demand complete, like,
They
total
didn't have
vassal
complete
status,
control even with. Hold on,
instead, Franco was able to
dude.
negotiate the economic aid on his own terms.
Yeah, that was the same with de Gaulle in France. Okay.
So that's what I'm trying to say. He's like a de Gaulle type figure.
Yeah, he is like a de Gaulle like figure. But why would there be? There's no one who's shilling de Gaulle infographics in the server.
Well, it's mostly just to counter the idea that he's like this big bad.
Nobody
fascist.
cares about Franco. That's the problem. It's not that there's a campaign to say, oh, Franco's worse than Hitler. It's just that, why are you shilling him so persistently and so fucking often in the server? That's the problem.
Well, now that I've been able to get my point across to the community that he's a de Gaulle type figure, which many people continued to say he was this kind of Hitlerite, that type of stuff.
No, he wasn't Hitler. He was more like de Gaulle, but he was not based, according to the infrared official guiding ideology. Our line.
Okay, so
our line is Jose Diaz.
Okay.
Our line is Jose Diaz. We don't shill for de Gaulle either, right? De Gaulle was de Gaulle. We support the Stalinist Golden Center, the Stalinist line. Nobody is going to be a full patriot for their country unless they go down to the soil of their people and from scratch build completely new civil and political economic institutions like Mao did, not shilling for the landowners, not in de Gaulle's case shilling for the French colonial ruling class and France's vestigial colonial system. Even if he's against unipolarity, it's like he's doing it as a reactionary. And we're not necessarily saying he's a bad guy for that. We're just saying he was doomed to the dustbin of history. It was a complete vain struggle. That's also our line when it comes to Franco.
All right. So you'd recognize that he wasn't a total vassal state, more similar to de Gaulle. I think
he
we're not
was
going
more
to
similar
get much
to de
further.
Gaulle. It's definitely not true that Spain was fully controlled by the U.S. We all know that, right? But neither was France, and that's why the neoliberalism thing happened, because that one pretty much created the full control of the globalist system. But that doesn't mean we're going to sit here and die on the hill of these vain people who couldn't even stop that from happening. Because
I think we've pretty much settled it. I don't think we're going to agree on the other stuff, but we mostly agree anyway.
So I'm unilaterally banning the Franco infographics, period. And the Franco shit is concluded. There's no reason for this to be shitting up the server. I don't want to go take a shit and then open up the server and go to general chat and see shit about Franco anymore. Okay? So we're done with it now.
Deal.
Okay.
Oh, also, shout out to King Me. Yeah. See ya.
Okay. Who else? What is your business? Who are you? You're a new guy. I don't even, you have a leaf next to your name. I don't even know what you're doing here. All right, that's that. Okay, we had two people, kind of a not ideal enough showing, right? We're done with the jibber jabber. We're done with the jibber jabber. We're done with the jibber jabber. Okay? Thank you, Carlo. Appreciate you for the 20. Thank you so much, Carlo. Appreciate you, man.
There is something you are missing that Babala is not mentioning. The left in Spain rejected religion and tradition of their people, which caused Franco to rise. ML needs to uphold those things.
I agree with you fully. I agree with you fully. Stalin rehabilitated the Orthodox Church, so I agree with you. I'm not against that. I fully agree with you, Carlo. I am not here to uncritically be like, yeah, they didn't. Yeah, but it's like, who am I on the side with? Of course I'm on the side with the popular Spanish. Like, I support the French revolutionaries. I support Robespierre. So, guys, I'm waking up at like 7 a.m. now. And tomorrow, I'm going to promise you a mega stream. Okay? Tomorrow, we're doing the Patreon Q&A. Because Wednesday is the Ben Burgess debate. Yeah, that's Wednesday. So tomorrow, I want to do a massive stream to do the Patreon Q&A and some gameplay for Atomic Heart, which I want to continue, my Atomic Heart gameplay. But that concludes today's Infrared Rumble. And there wasn't a big showing. I'm not going to lie, there was not a big showing. There was not a big showing. Okay? So yeah. But it was enough. Okay? Time do I stream? About 4 p.m. tomorrow. How about that? What do we do a 4 p.m. stream? Once if you want a 4 p.m. stream tomorrow. Because I can do one. I can make that happen. No problem. I can make it happen. A 4 p.m. stream tomorrow is not hard. In fact, I could have done a 4 p.m. stream today. I just didn't think people would be awake. You guys want it? We'll do it. We'll do it. 4 p.m. stream. I gotta wake up early then, right? I've got to have dinner and then I gotta go to sleep. Beautiful stream, guys. Patreon Q&A tomorrow, so get your questions in for tomorrow. It's gonna be the ultimate Patreon Q&A. Someone's in show queue. What does this guy want? I don't care. Too bad. He's too early. This guy joined 3 days ago. He's not too significant enough, okay? Alright, guys. Great stream. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.